Thank you, Bonnie. Thank you. That's a wonderful introduction, and thank you all. Super nice to see you, although from the stage it's super hard to see you with the lights blaring at me. Anyway, I've been looking forward to this for the past few weeks. Honestly, this particular day, marked in my calendar, looking forward for two reasons. All right. Reason number one, as Bonnie mentioned, I've been working with Plato and Kwang and all the good, awesome folks here for about 6 years. Thank you. This is useful too. For 6 years, right? And the idea was to meet. Forget the talk. Talks are good. You'll see the content later. But the most important thing is to meet people. And I'm super happy to see folks that have actually been on Zoom sessions and chatting. So that's the number one. That's number one why I'm so happy to be here today. Number two, look at what I'm rocking. It's the Queen concert today in San Francisco. For those born in the 50s or 60s or 70s like me, you would recognize who they are. If you're born later, maybe you don't. Right? That's okay. But maybe you remember Bohemian Rhapsody. Right? That was a movie. So anyway, it's playing at Chase Center tonight at 8 o'clock. That's where I'm headed, right after this. So two reasons why it's an important day today. Okay, so what am I doing here today? Trying to figure out how the clicker works, right? So yeah, we're going to talk about AI, ML at DoorDash. And along the way, we're going to figure out what lessons we learned. So let's start. Mark Andreessen, about a decade or so ago, came up with a very, very popular saying, which is, software is eating the world. Most people did not realize what that meant at the time. And here we are at the heart of Silicon Valley. And you now realize what he meant. Software has indeed eaten the world. But he revised his statement a couple years ago and said, you know what? Now AI, ML is going to eat the software. And now you realize what's happening, especially with Gen AI, LLMs, etc. That's exactly what's playing out. Guess where it's happening? In the heart of Silicon Valley, right here. Right? So that's what's happening. So each one of you are leaders, are senior ICs, trying to figure out, what does this mean for your organization? What should you do about it? What should your strategy be? Well, guess what? You can surely participate in this revolution, build your own AI ML platform if you so wish. You're not alone. If you were to look at this particular blog, again, the links are down there and the slides will be shared. There are many companies that have assembled their own AI ML platform. I've sorted some of them. Netflix, DoorDash, Uber, it's all linked there. And there's a reason why I sorted them that way. Turns out, I worked there, all those three companies, and I was there while we built those platforms. So if these companies can do it, so can you. And there's a lot of lessons to be learned and shared, and that's why I'm here. So that's me, been around these companies, as Bonnie mentioned. And the story that I would like to pick on today is the story of DoorDash, which I joined around 2019. DoorDash, although it's been in operation for a few more years before that, believe me, did not have an AI ML platform. All right? So that's where the story begins. Let's start with the story. We're going to go through all of these interesting agenda topics. And I don't want to be coy and imagine that you do not know what DoorDash is. Right? But I guess what you all think about it as a food delivery company. Well, it is, for sure. But ahead of that, it also does a few other things. Like the real thing about DoorDash is empowering local economies of whatever kind. Maybe alcohol, maybe flowers, maybe convenience, groceries, whatever you want. That's what we want to deliver. How are we going to do that? Outside of, again, just that, similar to Amazon Prime, there's Dash Pass, which is like a subscription program. Anyway, I'm not here to sell you the business. The business is selling itself, it's doing just fine, but let's see how AI ML can help solve that business, right? So I will just boil it down to 3 main points. That's all. We're just going to focus on 3 main points. Number 1, know your game. Number 2, dream big, start small. Number 3, get 1% better every day. Don't stop. And that number 3, by the way, it's in a loop, never stops. Right? So let's go through each one of these. Number 1 is know your game. Well, If you think you're going to practice, running around with your soccer ball, and the game that you're invited to is basketball, well, you're going to fail, right? Obvious. Yeah. So how do you understand what the game is? And that's the most important thing. The way I look at this is divide it into two spots. Understand the problem space, understand the solution space. What do we mean by that? In the case of AI ML, for example, at DoorDash, we could think of like 120 plus use cases before we started off building the platform, right? Example, predictions, estimated time of arrival, search and discovery, personalization, in terms of logistics and operation, matching a driver or a dasher, as we call them, to the order, et cetera, fraud, promotions, customer support. Any company that's got millions of users obviously has to do support. So each and every one of these presents an opportunity to introduce AI ML. So that's the problem space. Specifically about DoorDash, we could just go with the canonical example of a food order delivery. You would divide it into these 4 steps. And let's explore what that means. Creating an order. Well, AI ML can be introduced there as well. Recommendations, search and ranking, promotions. Order checkout. Well, that's when estimated time of arrival matters, right? Fraud is an important thing. Again, any company that does millions and billions of dollars of business, fraud is a thing. There's every opportunity that the hackers will take to create fraudulent orders, right? Again, it's in the third step, dispatching orders. You think it's done with the ETA. No. It's a 3-sided marketplace. Every person, every merchant, every dasher has to make a profit. Has to, figure. DoorDash has got no control over the amount of time it's going to take to prepare a food. We'll have to use AI ML to understand what it's going to take. Same thing with Dasher. As you can understand, traffic is something that DoorDash cannot control. So dispatch optimization is a problem that is super interesting. And I've been fortunate enough to have to solve this across 2 companies, Uber and DoorDash. So AI ML use case, one other interesting use case is that during the pandemic, right, contactless delivery became important. Why? Well, we didn't want to meet each other in person and transfer germs, right? So contactless delivery meant that the dasher would come to your doorstep, drop the food there. It's required to take a picture and head off. How do we know it's been delivered? AI ML, right? So these are the kind of use cases. That's the problem space. Solution space. Look at the solution space. Again, for predictions, it's going to turn out into time series forecasting. You could use ARIMA, you could use Kalman filters, you could use a bunch of other ideas. Searching and ranking models, GBDT, gradient boosted decision trees, right? Again, I won't go into every single one of them, but for every opportunity, there are solutions in that space. The question is, what software, what tech stack are you going to use? Well, turns out that there's thousands and more. For every little thing that you can think of, from data platform, pipelines, feature stores, observability, model deployment, the whole 9 yards. As you can see, these are, by the way, not the exhaustive list of companies. These are just some of them that are popular. There's more. So if you are starting thinking about your own space, and what your strategy ought to be, you got to figure out you do not want to get locked into any single one of them. Right? You want to figure out how you can best assemble the best of breed in each one of them, right? And that blog over there gives it a really good idea of how to stay modular. So anyway, plenty of choice, highly evolving. What was state of the art just about a month ago is just yesterday's news, right? So modular is the way to go. That's lesson number 1. So know your game. That's a game. Yeah, you got to understand the field, you got to understand the competitors, you got to understand the solution space, and that's what we covered. Number 2, dream big, start small. What does that mean? So again, for a platform team, which is what I run, the customers are internal customers. And outside of the technology part, you really want to partner with a team that is willing to work with you, that has got a really good use case that the rest of the company understands, believes in. If you were to solve that use case, the chances are your platform will succeed. If it doesn't, it won't. So the idea is to, again, divide it into 2 spaces. Dream big, start small. Dream big. It's about vision. And what does vision and bets mean? Well, let's go back to the DoorDash vision. The vision is about empowering local economies. What does that translate to? If you were to only divide it into just 3 points, it would translate to ASAP. I want my delivery now. In fact, as soon as I finish uttering my word, I want it now. Why? Because the expectations keep changing. It was good enough to deliver something in about an hour, 5 years ago, then 30 minutes, 20 minutes. Now people are expecting it to be delivered as quick as possible. So the faster we deliver, the better off we are from a business perspective. Selection of merchants, second point. Everyone wants, if you go there to the app and you do not find your favorite merchant, your food, you're going to be pissed off, right? So we want to make sure that the selection exists. Number 3, affordability. It matters, especially during these days with layoffs, inflation, all of the hard problems. We all care about that. Affordability matters. So if we were to figure out between these 3, how can we start small? Well, remember that one. Why? Because there's already a team at DoorDash that was looking into ETA prediction models. So we partnered with them. We said, you know what? Let's work together and see how we can generalize it, convert it into a platform, unlock the usage for the rest of the company. Again, I'm talking 2019, right? So we started with that team, and we said, you know what we bring to you? It's about scalability, reliability, and efficiency. What it's going to take in terms of cost, spend, dollars, right? That's what we offered. And then we had to make a technical decision, which is, should you go with a centralized service, or should you have a service for every model that a team is going to build? These are all technical discussions that had to be taken. And of course, we started small and said, you know what, let's start with one. Let's call it a centralized service. There's a reason we can evolve it later, right? That's how we started. And then, once you do that, the game becomes one of adoption. If you make one team successful, if they sing your praises, if they think that this idea has got merits, then it's a question of how you can sell it to the rest of your organization, right? So what next? Well, obviously, if you want to help the business, the second problem to attack is selection of merchants. This is where search and discovery, et cetera, come into play. How can we do that? Well, again, in the case of DoorDash, that's the context. It's about search. You can search for an item. You can search for a store. There's different kinds of things. It looks very simple, just like the Google search, but underneath, it's pretty decently complex. Again, it's completely based on AI/ML. So to conclude the second part, dream big. There's a lot in a company, tons of use cases, but you got to start somewhere. Start with that one hero use case. Go with a team that is willing to collaborate with you. And then figure out the adoption strategy. Who are you going to sell it to next? Right? Third, it's about getting 1% better every single day. How do we do that? It's about iterating the architecture. It's about learning. This is where it's going to get a little bit technical. So let's take this example of search and discovery, in which you could look for, in this case, Italian food. As you can see, the number of predictions that needs to be done from a personalization recommendation perspective is 2 or 3 orders of magnitude higher than the previous example of ETAs, right? Because there's going to be millions of orders per day, but the number of people who scroll around and search around, et cetera, is going to be a lot more, right? So what does that translate to from an engineering perspective is that the feature store is going to increase in volume crazy like that. Right? So you got to figure out, okay, in the beginning, you just went with whatever is the easiest feature store we could think of. At that point, Redis, right? And that was fantastic. Redis has got really good properties. It can act like a cache, low latency. Yep, all right. So we went with Redis, and we blogged about that stuff over here. Again, I don't have time to go into every single detail of this, but that's the idea. Again, a little bit more technical. You got to do optimizations there. Over there, if you look at the key value pairs, well, if there are millions of key value pairs, it's not going to work out from a scalability perspective. So create a list like that, compress them, store them in a compressed thing. So that's what we ended up doing. And we ended up reducing the cost by 1/3 and CPU utilization also by 38%. So which is fantastic. So we think we're done. Heck no, right? That's where the 1% iteration keeps coming around. We just discovered, well, this was mid-2022, and we just discovered that while Redis is an excellent, fantastic solution, it had some problems. Uptime, auto-scaling up and down. These were problems we're working with. CockroachDB or CRDB came to rescue. So guess what? We wrote another blog explaining why we need CockroachDB as well, in addition to Redis. So fast forward to today, we do about 5 million predictions per second, and we moved away from the centralized architecture into more of an isolated multi-tenant architecture. The point is the architecture will evolve, it should evolve, and you have to keep getting 1% better. So if you were to look at the blog today, you will see at that particular blog, the DS and ML blog, there are multiple hundreds of use cases that we've enabled, and they are all blogged in this area. It's pretty deep. Obviously, this talk will not do justice to what these are. So I highly encourage you to look into every single one of them, if you can. To summarize, know your game. Don't go playing basketball in a football game and vice versa. Know your game. Dream big, but start small. Understand the first use case, the hero use case, make them successful, figure out an adoption scaling strategy, and get better every single day. What did we learn? What did I learn throughout this time? Multiple lessons. For example, customer is key. It's not just for external customers. This is true for internal customers as well. I need to support like about 150 teams within DoorDash. They all have expectations. And believe me, the SLOs, SLIs, they're not the same for everyone. The ads use case is so very different from the search use case, which is very different from a chat support use case, which is different from fraud, etc. So you got to understand that prioritization becomes very important. If there's any platform leader here, you would know the politics there. The number of asks that come in your way is huge compared to the amount of people that you got to help solve that problem. Yeah? It's a highly evolving space. While we are proud of what we built, and we are known as one of the better AI/ML platform in the industry, guess what? It all got appended about a year ago with the advent of Gen AI and LLMs, right? So we got to figure that out. Decision and challenges. Not a month goes by, not a week goes by without me getting asked by a vendor, especially if I walk down here, somebody's going to say, hey, I've got a solution for you. It's an AI/ML solution, of course, right? So these are tough decisions. You got to make those decisions. Centralized platform, distributed, how to handle support volume. Because one of the side effects of getting success is that the demands will be even more. Expectations will be more. So how do you handle that? So those are the lessons learned. Again, this has been a whirlwind kind of thing. What's up next? Gen AI, this has been blogged as well. I asked the team to create like a Dash chat application, which could use the drop-down of GPT-3, 4, Llama models, 7B, 40B, Mistral, etc. And I asked it a question. What's next in the field of AI? As you can see, ChatGPT gave me a decently good answer. One of them is AI in healthcare. That's going to shoot up. And I noticed that quite a few of you are building startups or are in companies that are thinking about AI in health. Right? So fantastic. For each one of you, I wish you well. I wish you come up with a fantastic, great AI/ML strategy. And as far as one simple use case goes, with 1-800 number, you can now call soon 1-800 number for DoorDash, and just as a human would speak to you, could order, hey, I want my pizza, extra large, half and half, pepperoni and thin crust, etc. So as a human, you could do that with the power of AI/ML. With that, I ask you, what is your strategy? And thanks for listening.
Thank you. Your presentation made me hungry.
Yeah. This is happy hour right after. So
happy hour right after, but I think we have people here hungry for knowledge. So we have a few questions. I think there's probably more, so let's see if we can get through them all and ask some live questions too. How do you use ML and Gen AI for your support and ticketing use cases?
That is a great question. I think one of the first use cases, which is obvious, is because support is a lot about understanding textual data, about human textual data, and how do you convert that into a ticketing system? I would argue that most companies are going down the same path, so are we, which is the first thing is to understand how to convert those textual data into something more workflow-driven, integrated with the workflow. That's the part we're going. I can go into details, but obviously that's going to be a 5-minute answer. Answer is yes, that is one of the very first use cases we're looking into. Second one is about developer productivity. There's an immense opportunity there.
All right. Can you talk about team composition? Do you have PMs in the ML platform?
It's a question that I get asked every single time. Does a platform or an infrastructure group deserve a product manager? Right? Well, it's a too geeky a subject. Not too many product managers are interested in it. The answer is, briefly, we did have a PM, briefly though. But good news. I've opened one up. There's a rec. If anyone's interested in a job of a product manager for this group, that position is now open.
Amazing. It's like good advertising. Okay. What kind of partnerships or collaborations have played a significant role in the development of your AI ML platform at DoorDash?
That is such a great question. So I'm going to use the idea of a community here. I know I talked a lot about what we built. Guess what? We're standing on the shoulders of giants. We use PyTorch, which was open source by Facebook. We use vendors such as Databricks, Snowflake, et cetera, to do all of the data stuff. Anyway, there's a lot of open source libraries in there. While we assemble, I think we can get credit for assembling them in a certain way that has been successful, but I want to give credit where credit is due, which is all the community, all of the Silicon Valley folks here that do meetups like this, exchange ideas, share knowledge, do open source. That's what made us successful.
Good answer. How do you see the future of AI ML evolving in the context of DoorDash's business? And what are the upcoming AI ML challenges you're preparing to tackle? You kind of covered that a little bit at the end already, but
yeah.
Want to give a quick answer on that?
Sure. We just had a hackathon recently. You know, the best ideas come bottoms up. So in that hackathon, there were about, last I counted, 183 ideas submitted by the engineers on what we could do with GenAI and LLM. So we're not suffering from a lack of ideas. The real question is, which one of them can be productionized in a practical way, understanding cost angle. So that's where we're focusing on now. Again, not worried about the number of use cases, more interesting to see which one is more practical.
All right. Okay, I think this one's maybe a little jokey. We'll see. Has your AI ML platform ever tried to convince you that it's the one who really deserves the promotion to Senior Director of Engineering?
So,
has your AI ML platform ever tried to convince you that it's the one who really deserves promotion to Senior Director of Engineering?
Do I deserve the promotion?
No, not you.
I have no idea what this means.
Does your platform deserve it?
The platform deserves. There's a saying in Hindi, it's a country of India where I come from, it says, Ghar ki murgi dal barabar. For those in India, you can understand what that means. What it translates to is, everyone praises everyone outside. Within, there's a lot of holes in your strategy. So at this moment, I think I'm receiving more brickbats and expectations like, hey, you haven't done this and you haven't done that, as opposed to, this is awesome, this is good. I'm getting a lot of that from the outside community.
Okay. All right, so I'm sure there's tons more questions, and we do have time, so let's switch to live questions. Anybody want to ask a live question? How about over here? I think they're going to bring a mic around to you. Yes. He's bringing a mic to you.
The mic's coming. ETA is 20 seconds, 15 seconds, 10 seconds, 1 second. There you go.
Hey, thanks for a wonderful talk. I was just curious if, I know how engineering organizations track spend and infra tends to be a huge chunk. I'm curious if ML/AI is now sort of showing up there as a huge chunk as well, or is that under infra? I'm just curious what your experience is.
Absolutely. Not just AI, ML, data as a whole, which is the area that I lead, is definitely seen as a cost center in many companies. Not a week goes by. In fact, I should change that. Not a day goes by without my CFO or my head of engineering pinging me. I was like, hey, what the heck is going on with the spend? So absolutely. The question is, though, ROI. So do you see a return of investment? And that's where we all struggle. because a bunch of these can be shown as having value, surely from a product perspective, but there's lack of alignment within the industry on what the infra part of it can cost. Right? Again, while I was working at Netflix, I think Justin was here, he can help corroborate. It used to take Netflix about 3 cents to stream a movie. Again, I have no idea if it's true today. This is about 2012, right? And that was thought as acceptable, right? Who came up with that idea? Is 5 cents better? Should it be driven down to 1 cent, right? And if you were to compare it to marketing costs, which is in dollars, why are you after us engineers for spending 3 pennies? So these are all interesting questions, but the answer to your question is absolutely cost is a thing. Not a day goes without me worrying about it. Not a week goes without my superiors pinging me about it. But the struggle we all have is to try and understand how to define the return of investment. And if we were to succeed there, this is an area that is, to me, not debatable at all. I'm super convinced that the return of investment is there.
Any other questions? One right here. I think I can just give you this one if you don't mind coming up.
Hey, Sudhir, thank you for the lovely talk. My question is more process-oriented. You mentioned you didn't have PMs. You have an open rec now. How do you prioritize what you work on? There's a lot of good responsibilities that PMs help hone in on.
Yeah.
So how is that managed in a platform team that you have?
I am absolutely convinced of the value of a product manager. I'm super sad that I don't have one, which is why, but it took me a while to convince my set of leadership to make space for it. In the absence of it, how did we do that? Again, it's all about adoption. Remember in one of my slides, I said, first pick a hero use case, then it's about adoption. What essentially helps is if you try to make the teams that already use it sing the praises. Make sure that they are for what you're building. That's number one. Prioritization, I gotta say, I still haven't cracked the nut there. It's a difficult problem, especially because once you reach success, now there's a lot more expectations, a lot more asks, and we try to adopt the RICE framework, R-I-C-E, right? Well, guess what? Frameworks are frameworks. At the end of the day, if you don't support what they've asked, they're not going to be happy. Right? So, yes, there are frameworks. I could suggest frameworks. We've tried to use those frameworks, but at the end of the day, I don't think we've cracked that nut yet.
Anyone in the back? I think we have time for one more question. Or anywhere else?
Question, what's for the cocktail tonight? Are we going to get good drinks, or is it going to be something like Bud Light?
I think there's some good drinks, yes. Are you going to be sticking around at the happy hour?
I will be sticking around for the happy hour right after this. I've been told it's
good.
at...
So any unanswered questions can come your way. All right.
Absolutely.
Great. I do have one last question for you, though.
Let's go.
I've been asking all the speakers this question. You're the last person I get to ask. I'm kind of sad about it.
Uh-oh.
What do you enjoy so much that you just completely lose track of time?
All right, that's a great question. The way I think about it is although we've been doing this, I've been part of these teams doing this, I do not have an academic background in AI ML. When I look at those oxide papers and I look at those calculus and formulas, my heart skips a beat because I don't understand them. Right? So it essentially means that I take a lot of time studying and learning about them every single day. But to be honest with you, that's not what keeps me going. What keeps me going is the fact that behind all those formulas, behind all those algorithms are humans. As this individual right over here, funny, he's busy with his phone. He's in my org, right? It's the humans. The humans are the ones that I think I want to spend most time with because, as ma'am, you suggested, prioritization is a challenge. Managing expectations is a challenge. That's the thing that takes most of my time, and as it should.
All right. So you're a people person.
I kind of think so, but you all should tell me if I'm not. If I am. We'll figure that out at the happy hour.
All right. Thank you.
I become a good people person when I'm at the happy hour.
Well, I think this was a great way to wrap up the day, the whole conference, actually. Thank you, Sudhir. I think it's been amazing hearing from you.
Thank you.